Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. It's the blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, signing black in and shining again, asking you to hit that share button because the message is more important than the messenger. This being said, I saw the video finally in which that young girl calls herself ugly on camera, and her hairdresser consoles her, comforts her, and praises her. Kids are cruel, and I'm sure she heard it from some kids. I'm sure she heard it more than once. I'm gonna tell you how it is that I wound up seeing this, because this is what's strange about it. I did not see this video in English in the United States. I saw the video with the sound in English, but the news story was in Arabic. You heard me correctly. That video made news in the Arabic-speaking world. Now, we know the Arabs to be a people that don't care nothing about black anything, and actually may look down on it. And we know them as a people that always want to silence the conversations about black and white supremacy, and colorism, and the preference for white and the dispreference for black and dark skin, and the wish that we would just, bleach ourselves and maybe make our noses smaller. We know that this is embedded in Arab culture. We know this partially because Jay Shine even pointed out a phenomenon which many African Americans who are Muslim will tell you that Arabs are not real Muslims, and I am part of that phenomenon. Now, I don't tell you that categorically Arabs are not real Muslims. What I do tell you is that the ones who have this brainwashing are lacking in their religion. And if you call them on it and they try to justify it, now they're aware of it, they are no longer real Muslims if they decide to stay on this once you've made them aware. I am one of those niggas in that regard. And I say that N-word, applying it to myself only for one reason, because that's exactly what the hell many of us would think if you saw me in an argument with them. If you saw me in an argument with them, you would call me nigger the same way a white supremacist probably would. Because I don't show the mercy and I don't show the much respect. Once they try to defend it, I'm like, no, see, now you are the enemy at this point. And if you are an enemy to the oppressed people on behalf of the oppressor, you, as far as I'm concerned, you're not Muslim. Because I believe in a hadith that is found in the volume of At-Tabari that says that if you side with the oppressor knowing he is an oppressor, you've left Islam. I don't know how strong the hadith is, but because of the moral principle of it, I have to go ahead and take it until I get a classification for it. But this story made news on an Arabic-speaking news channel in an Arabic-speaking country. I don't remember the name of it, but it's not one that you're going to see on, it's not one that's based in Dearborn, Michigan for the Arabic-speaking population in the West. No, it is in an Arabic-speaking nation. It is catering to those Arabs who speak only Arabic. They don't have to speak English to watch this. It's not a bilingual Arab audience being catered to. And it went viral, and of course there were tweets about it. Now, I'm assuming that the tweets were also in Arabic, and my wife showed it to me, and my wife was actually crying. She was not crying by the time she came to me, but she explained to me that she had just finished crying. This is something that has affected my family. I have an ancestor who came from a white father and a Gulf Coast Creole mother, not out of New Orleans. When he later on left home and started doing well for himself, he married, and then when he had a baby, he brought the baby back to meet his own parents. His white European immigrant father was fine with the grandbaby. It was his black Creole mother that said, in the Creole French dialect of her particular city, again, not New Orleans, ironically, that baby's too black. This happened to my own family. This is a part of my family heritage. And since then, my family has been staunchly against colorism. The girl obviously had been hearing that she was ugly from students and maybe an adult. Probably an adult in the family. Maybe not, though. We don't really know her home situation or her school situation. We do know that somewhere down the line, she learned that she's ugly. Here's the funny thing about it. The ones that were tweeting in Arabic were saying, this is some showbit. If a kid thinks that they're naturally ugly, especially just because they're dark, just because they're black, then this is a world that is unfit for human habitation. That's a translation of one of the tweets that I saw in Arabic. I mean, I didn't understand that unfit was used for non-living things. I thought that the word that I was looking at meant unrighteous, but it can also mean unfit. You could use that description for a tool or for a medicine. And so I learned some new Arabic this morning, but I saw this and it dawned on me that this became international at one of the worst possible times, because let's be honest, the ones to first start the confrontation of colorism were black people in the Americas specifically. We were the first ones to start really confronting it and saying, man, to hell with this mess. And the confrontation, our confrontation against it, is older than what we might think that it is. It goes back to probably even before Marcus Garvey's days. Oh yeah, the push back against it. Nobody led this. The Arabs would have never started this. Absolutely not. The Indians didn't start this. This is something I'm sure they got from us. But they're talking about it and they're going against it now. I mean, at least they're divided on the issue, which means that there is an opposition that's growing. Pakistan, absolutely not. So a Hindu country is actually divided on the issue, but Pakistan is unanimously in favor of colorism, hands down. I'm sure that there's opposition, but it's very small. That tells me that the character of the population of Pakistan is worse than the character of the population of India. I'm talking in generalities, not every individual. But generally speaking, that's what we learn. That's what we can see from this. But this finally became international, and too goddamn effing late, and I'll tell you why. Now we in Black America are able to understand a very basic trend about colorism, and that is that it is not passed from adult black male down to the children. It is not passed that way. Are there adult black males that are colorist? Oh, we've seen them and seen their tweets or their Facebook post with an Instagram or Snapchat post, whatever the case is. We've seen evidence of it. Usually it's a few rookie or relatively new professional athletes that are quite young. Usually it was them in these cases. Stephen Clark as well. But understand this too. Keep this in mind as well. It's been going both ways. A lot of us don't want to admit that. A lot of us really ain't ready for that. But black adult men are not allowed to pass this down to the children. Any black adult man passing this on to children and caught doing so is going to be called out for it. We know this. And let's call it what it is. If kids are learning racism and so-called featureism that does not favor us, but we black men are also being blamed for not being in the homes and involved in our kids' lives, let me ask you, why the hell are we being blamed for this when in fact we now know, because many of us are coming out and saying this, that you can't learn this from an adult black male in the community. Because once he's caught telling you this, you will be told not to listen to him no more, and they ain't gonna let him hang around you. Oh yeah, see, if you are an adult black male, you are more likely to get away with molesting a child than to get away with teaching them colorism, even if his mother agrees with the colorism. Now, because we're coming to this realization and we're saying this and we're debating about this in Black America, It's now going international. This is done so that our argument with each other between the genders will also go international. So, brothers, I'm not addressing sisters in this for the most part, not the ones that really ain't our sisters. Now, the ones of them that are not against black men as a whole, and at least try to be fair-minded, yeah, they're free to listen. But the ones of them that have, the ones of them that want to talk that militant feminism and it's always the man's fault, they're not being addressed. I don't really have much to say to them. I did say something to them earlier, and even that was for their own good. If you're going to swirl, pick men from backgrounds that don't have problems with black people to increase your chances and your happiness and make it better for your kids, because your kids will be black. I'd address them for that reason, but other than that, no. That's what I'm going to tell them. I'm really just getting the kids' bloods off my, their kids' blood off my hands when I told them that last weekend. Now, yeah, shuck that fit. No. I've addressed them enough. I'm talking to you, blood. Bro, you need to, when you do go abroad, make sure that you change, make sure, and I wouldn't even say change the narrative, make sure you ruin the opportunity for them to do it. To give the narrative to everybody else in the world that you're just disloyal to your black women because they're black. That you have self-hatred issues. No. When you do travel abroad, since there's more of you doing it, when you make sure that you do interact with locals, and here's the reason why. They may not become your allies. They may. It doesn't matter. The point is they will not become unnecessary enemies. We don't need more enemies than what we got. There are people in the world that are not enemies, and we don't need to let someone else come along and make them such. So when you preemptively defend or inoculate against propaganda with facts, you're not doing so because you're a kid that cares what other people think, and that's all it is to it. You're doing it so that you don't have unnecessary enemies based on something for which you're not guilty in the first goddamn place. That's why. So keep this in mind. You might as well go abroad. Before she starts doing it and turning everybody against you that was not your enemy to begin with. I'm going to make it known. Malaysia, maybe even Indonesia, Philippines. I might even hit up Southern Thailand one day. And when I interact with English-speaking locals, I'm going to make them know. I'm not going to make that the topic of conversation for the whole evening. I'm just going to let them know, well, you know, black men and black women are going through a spat right now. We're reacting to what they've been saying about us on TV. What do you mean? Well, like movies like The Color Purple. I'm sure that's international. I'm sure it was shown here, but the book was actually written and the man was not even that bad in the book. So they've been making black men look really bad and dangerous in these movies. Unfortunately, a lot of black women chose to believe it. That's bound to cause internal problems, and we're trying to sort them out. That's what's going on. So that way, she can't come along and say, oh, these niggas ain't never there for their kids. CDC studies show that ain't the case. We may not always live with them, but we're there for them. We even good stepdads. So, yeah, this colorism thing went international. For that reason, I'm shocked. I'm very shocked because I would have never expected Arabs to pick this up. I would have never expected them to fiv a guck for 1 second. Maybe some black Arabs, but non-black Arabs or Arabs that let's say Arabs that don't know they black. No, I would have never expected that. Now, this is a turning point, and it's good for them. It actually is. And notice I didn't say Bedouins because you're going to have to put a gun to a Bedouin's head to get them to ever improve anything about themselves. They got good things, they got good traits already, but to get them to improve a trait and make something better takes the threat of force. A gun to the head, the threat of prison, or the threat of starvation. And that's it. If you cannot burn them, starve them, imprison them, or kill them to get them to improve something about themselves, they're never effing going to do it. The good things they have, they'll generally keep, but it's easier to get them to drop those good habits. They used to not swear to God so much, even when they were telling the truth. Now you see them swearing to God without even thinking about it, and they're lying. Wallahi, it cost me that much. I'm selling it to you at a discount because you're a nice guy. No, you're not. Wallahi, I did not call black people slaves. That type stuff. So you just have to keep in mind, black folk, that This is actually a positive change in a part of the world that we have chosen to look down on because they chose to look down on us. Now, this could continue. It could fizzle out into nothing. Time will tell. But it's good for you to know this so that you can see and therefore you can make informed decisions as you relate to people as you move around the globe. Because let's be honest, that guy, remember the man with the stick that chased after that old Asian man, started harassing him? I don't like Asians. See, that was some nigger stuff. Because the guy he was chasing after wasn't even Chinese, more than likely. Just picking any Asian, just going and messing with him. What if that guy was from Cambodia and they've never done nothing to black folks at all? That's a nationality that is not our enemy, hands down. I can't speak for the future. Right now, they're not our enemies. They're just not. No Cambodian that I've never met is walking around, male or female, got an issue with black people because they black. You got to start something with them. Just as an example. So anyway, this is one thing that may or may not change, but it's good for you to know this. And hey, look, it's my job. I told you I would give you the most accurate information I could find so that you could formulate your relationships with everybody based on as much as we could possibly know at the time. So this is me trying to do my job, trying to keep my promise that I made in the video that I entitled My Role in the Black Manosphere. But understand that there's something behind this. And also keep this in mind. Right now is a crucial time for black folks because on one hand, you've got this COVID-19 scaring the hell out of everybody. You also have people assuming that we're immune to it. Black and white folks alike assuming we're immune. We are a human race. Meaning we black folks are the original race of the entire human species. So do not let people give you this idea that just because you're black, you're immune until medical evidence and studies back it up. Be careful about that. And as a matter of fact, if we're not immune and they spread the false rumors that we are, when in fact it's just that the virus tends to die at about 27 degrees Celsius. I forgot what that is Fahrenheit, but it's pleasantly warm temperatures. Therefore, it doesn't spread as fast in tropical places like Africa and in the lowly elevated tropical parts of South America too. Not the high elevations. I don't mean the other parts outside the tropics. They're about to start their fall. The temperatures are going to drop. The virus can spread. But when people start saying, well, the Negroes are immune to it and darker skinned people are immune to it, and they won't let us into their countries to seek refuge or whatever the case is, when in fact, actually, it may just be the tropical climate, that could be good for us or it could be bad for us. So we're in a crucial time where we have to keep abreast of number one, what are the facts? Number two, what are the rumors? Only so that you can prepare for the possible actions people may take based on the rumors and based on the facts. You can defend yourself. That's all. We got to be careful about that. We have to think about what we're doing. And we got to think about the situation in which we find ourselves. And it's not our job to be patient so that other people can be stupid and then take advantage of us. Now, it does turn out that because most of Africa is in the tropics, generally speaking, daytime temperatures get warm enough to where the virus gets slow when it's near death or it dies. And most people are outdoors exposed to the sunlight, which is a natural disinfectant. Yes, it makes perfect sense that in tropical Africa, the spread is going to be stopped. That does make sense. North Africa right now, it's in the northern hemisphere. They're finishing up their winter just like you are when you're listening. Southern Africa right now is beginning its fall, so the temperatures are dropping. Southern Africa, or I should say South Africa specifically, is actually not tropical and it's not in the tropics. So they go through 4 seasons like you do in the northern hemisphere, but the times are reversed. So they're about to begin their fall right now. The temperatures are dropping, and so it can spread. If everybody were to stay indoors and they never expose themselves to sunlight, it could spread. Or they were always under some air conditioning. These are the things that could happen. So as you learn more about this, you black men also have you have an understanding. This can be a time when, because African governments have some training in containment due to Ebola. Not necessarily a hell of an infrastructure, but they've got a stronger infrastructure than what we may think, and they've got some training due to Ebola. They're in a position to mitigate its spread along with the help of the climate. This may be a time that we start looking to actually aid the motherland. And these are some business moves that some of you can make. I can't, but some of you can. Also, the thing to understand, thing to keep in mind is that, notice this. Ebola did train a lot of medical staff on containment and the spread of and preventing the spread of disinfection. And many of them had this already. They had some of this knowledge already, but they got practice with what they already knew due to Ebola just a few years ago, right? Keep this in mind. And this is going to be the propaganda that we need to keep in mind as black men. Because we're both dealing, in Africa and the Americas, we're dealing with a problem, and that problem is that there are many black women on both sides of the Atlantic who believe the negative propaganda about their own people by the ones who hate them. This is something that does happen. Consequently, it's going to be up to us black men on both sides of the Atlantic, ADOS or non-ADOS, continental or non-continental, Caribbean or South American or Central American. It's going to be the job of black folks, period, to start making decisions about Africa based on accurate information and not based on perception. And here's what I mean as an example. Somalia is not going through any famine or drought right now. That doesn't make the news. When a drought or a famine stops in any part of Africa, that does not make the headlines. See, when Australia was going through the fires, that made the headlines. When the rains came, that made the headlines too. When the killing began in the Central African Republic between the Muslims and the Christians, that made the headlines. Whenever there's been a dip in the killings, that doesn't make the headlines. I shouldn't even say it makes the headlines. That actually didn't make the headlines. That actually did not. But it would not make the news at all when it stops. When the Civil War broke out in Liberia, we heard about that. When the Civil War stopped, we didn't hear about that unless you were checking the news, looking specifically for that, or you knew some Liberians. You had to check the back pages to find out something like that. And you had to be interested in order to remember it. But you were not going to get the same, just the end of a bad news spell in any part of Africa is not going to reach you as easily and as quickly. That's by design. After all, it is Africa and white supremacists rule the world. So this being by design, we're going to have to be the ones to actually give good and bad news from the continent to the masses so that people can make their decisions based on more recent information. So you'll understand that the starvation stopped in Ethiopia back during the 80s. And that the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s did not see any major famines there. But we also have to let them know that when back in the 80s, when the famine hit, the food stuff was largely being sent by black Americans. Most of the Americans sending stuff back home were black Americans. White folks sang about it. We sang about it. We went in the pantries and sent out food. That was us, mostly us. It was more, they were getting more help from us than what they realized. We need to realize that actually we've had a history of trying to help out the motherland from the very beginning. When Italy first decided they were going to colonize Ethiopia and they started attacking, shortly after that, there were many African Americans that went and left to join their army and fight against the Italians. This happened. The United States State Department had to stop issuing passports to black Americans after a while because of that. Because they knew these black folks are going to travel over there, go to Italy, shoot up a bunch of Italian Dago Guinea wops, because that's what they used to call them. I'm not saying that to insult the Italians, even though I have the right to. That's what they used to call them. They said they're going to start shooting these Dago Guinea wops who, we might not call them white, but they're whiter than the niggers are. And the niggers will come back from Ethiopia full up with pride and having desensitized themselves to the taboo against shooting and hurting white men. Guess what? World War II got started anyway, partially based on that. Hitler was motivated to do the things he did for which the nations wound up attacking him and starting World War II because he watched Mussolini get away with attacking Ethiopia, which was illegal at that time. It was against international law. And violate international law again and again in these attacks. He saw him get away with it. He was like, hey, yo, man, I like what you're doing. You got away with it. What you say we link up? Because remember, they was homies. Remember that. And what wound up happening? The United States wound up needing black soldiers to help them to liberate some other people in Europe. You know who I'm talking about. And whether it was 6 million or 6,000, whatever the number was, they needed some liberation. And, you know, black folk are coming in there with names like the Liberators. I mean, what you think Red Tails was about? So they needed us, and what wound up happening? Black veterans came back from World War II, and they weren't going to tolerate no more crap off these crackers. And we had the civil rights movement to kick up again and enter a new phase. And truth be told, this was a time when there was a choice presented to white America. And that choice was, you either listen to MLK with his nonviolent stuff, or you listen to the Deacons of Defense and Malcolm. And what the hell you think is going to happen if Malcolm and the Deacons of Defense get together? That's why they listen to King. That was the reason for it. It took them a while. Malcolm was dead by that point, but that's why they listened to him. So we have to keep in mind that a lot of this propaganda about Africa is not only not true, but it's actually the opposite. It is designed to do one thing, make you look down on the continent completely and not see it as a whole entire continent of which you are a mix. And to keep him looking down on you as though you're just nothing but a bunch of lost nigger mutts. And to keep you looking down on yourself thinking you're just a bunch of lost nigger mutts. You see, when somebody from Nigeria who does look down on you calls you Akata, you have to keep in mind that you were trained to see yourself as exactly what they mean when they say the word Akata. You're just not trained to think of the word Akata. You're trained to think of yourself with the word nigger. Sometimes jigaboo, porch monkey, tree swinger, spear chucker, Tarzan chaser, savage. Hell, should I go further? You're trained to think of yourself as a gorilla or a chimp, not even fully human. And they're trained to think of themselves as backwards and savage the same way. So we're trained to see each other with these stereotypes and to see ourselves with these stereotypes. Unfortunately, the women on both sides of the Atlantic have fallen victims to this. And that's part of why colorism is so prevalent and it spreads so easily from one black nationality to another. I mean, let's call it what the hell it is. A bunch of Africans that may not necessarily like each other and easily, and actually Africa's not as divided as what you think. Wode Maya has an easy time going into Tanzania and they ain't fighting with him. He from Ghana, they from Tanzania, they ain't fighting. But the point is that people in the motherland who can sit up and argue with each other about anything agree on skin bleach. Why is that the case? Because the women continent-wide have been, for whatever reason, convinced to believe what white folks say. And you can tell that because what do? They judge the men by these stereotypes, especially in the West. It's worse there. That phenomenon is worse there in the West. And that is why it is that we men are going to have to take control of not only the narratives that are going to be spread internationally, not just to prevent what Master's going to say, but even what Sapphire's going to say. That's also why we need to start trading more information formally and informally across the continent so that we can inform each other of what actually is the case and what is a misconception. And if Sapphire wants to reform herself and listen and join in the efforts, that's fine. That don't mean we got to take care of her kids from some other dudes. It don't mean we got to simp and save her. But if she wants to reform herself, she takes care of her kids. She takes care of her own life. But she really does want to like grow up at that point and contribute to the defense of the race in general without saying to men, you need to come over here and take care of my kids from other men so I can go back and F they daddy some more. Without that stuff, then yeah, we'll let them in. Why not? Of course. That's just being fair. Now, that's assuming that this actually wasn't seriously what they want to do. You ain't got to trust nobody, man or woman, when you don't know them. And don't say that Black Mind told you this or Black Heart told you this. No, go around telling somebody Black said that we got to trust him right off the bat. No, you ain't even got to trust another guy right off the bat. But what I am saying is that we men are going to have to be at the forefront of that as well. Just clearing up the misconceptions that we have about each other. Just that, so that we can make more investments internationally and cooperate as a race Because even though our race is very diverse and we're not all the same, we are under attack, and it behooves us to cooperate, not even out of some fantasy of racial unity, but out of the necessity of mutual self-defense. Now, that's how you can be both red pill and pro-black, and I mean genuinely pro-black at the same time. I think I've said enough. I've gone on for half an hour and a few seconds. I really didn't mean to. Plan to record another one about in response to what Derrick Jackson said to these women about some, why should he chase you, or why he thinks you should chase him. But I'm not going to address the women in that. I'm going to tell you why she should chase you in the next one, inshallah, and why you better not chase her. Some of the reasons you already know. So anyway, thanks for listening. I really appreciate your patience. Long live Africa. And I mean that from the bottom of my black heart and the depths of my black mind. Assalamu alaikum and black male power. Just because Becky, Master Charlie, and Trifling Sapphire don't like it.